In this episode, I want to take you way back, all the way back to the years between 700 AD and January of 1492. This was years before the conquest and colonization of Africa by different European nations. January 1492 marked the end of nearly 700 to 800 years of African Muslim rule over the Iberian Peninsula. The Iberian Peninsula covers Spain, Portugal, and some parts of southern France. On the southern side, it is separated from northern Africa by a narrow strait at the juncture of the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. This is the Strait of Gibraltar. African Moors began their occupation of Spain between 711 and 718 AD under the leadership of Tariq ibn Ziyad. Tariq was the general of Musa ibn Nusayr, who had conquered Morocco and had left him to govern in his place. Around this period, Spain was under Visigothic rule, and its Visigothic king, Witiza, had passed away, leaving behind a civil war that weakened the kingdom. It is said that his dispossessed sons appealed to the Moors for help, who hastily responded after seeing an opportunity to conquer Spain for themselves. Around May of 711 AD, Tariq crossed the Strait of Gibraltar from northern Africa with his army and invaded Spain. The Umayyad conquest over Hispania, which is sometimes called the Umayyad conquest of the Visigothic kingdom, became the expansion of the Umayyad Caliphate into Spain and the Iberian Peninsula. According to the accounts of the historian Edward Vivian Scobie, in his article, The Moors and Portugal's Global Expansion, he notes on page 336 that the reins of the horses of the Moors were as fire, their faces black as pitch, their eyes shone like burning candles, their horses were swift as leopards, and the riders fiercer than a wolf in a sheepfold. At night, the noble Goths, the German rulers of Spain to whom Roderick belonged, were broken in an hour, quicker than tongue could tell. Tariq's army consisted mostly of Berbers from North Africa. This army defeated the Visigothic king Roderick at the Battle of Guadalete in 712, after which this army was reinforced by another army led by Musa ibn Nusayr and continued advancing northward through Hispania to southern France. Around 717, the army crossed the Pyrenees and went into Septimania. Septimania was a region in southern France. The Pyrenees mountain range is at the border of Spain and France. This area, up until Gaul, was occupied until 759 AD. According to the Chronicle of 754, it is noted that many townspeople fled to the hills rather than defend their cities. They simply thought that the invasion was a raid and would be temporary. They did not expect it to be a permanent change of government. The Chronicle also notes that the entire army of the Goths that had come with Roderick also fled. Unfortunately, this is the only contemporary account of the battle, and the scarcity of detail has led to many suppositions by historians. The defeat of the royal army also left the entire land open to the invaders. The northern areas of Iberia remained unconquered since they were hard to secure when taken. High western and central Sub-Pyrenean valleys just remain unconquered. The 3 to 4 years of conquering the area was a reasonable time given the communication issues in this era. It was time spent planning the submission of towns and their future governance. Some towns signed treaties with the Umayyad, and their government and Christian beliefs were respected. Other towns, however, such as Cordova and Toledo, came under direct Umayyad rule. For instance, the cathedral in Cordova was portioned and shared to provide for the religious needs of both Christians and Muslims. This situation lasted for some 40 years until Abd al-Rahman's conquest of southern Spain. Unlike popular opinion, It was ancient Africans who carried civilization to Spain and other parts of Europe. Way before the Umayyad conquest of Hispania, in 1700 BC, the first civilization of Europe was established on the Greek island of Crete, and the Greeks were civilized by the black Africans of the Nile Valley. This civilization was then passed on to the Romans, who then lost it, leading to the Dark Ages that lasted about 5 centuries. The Dark Ages then ended when the Moors conquered Hispania and began their settlement and rule over this area around 711 AD. During the Dark Ages, arts and sciences may have somehow gone idle or silent or missing in action for large parts of Europe, but this is not the case for Africa. According to the accounts of historian Cheikh Anta Diop, the great empires of the world were black empires during the Middle or Dark Ages. The educational and cultural centers of the world were predominantly African. The Moors invaded Hispania in 711 AD, and African Muslims literally civilized the wild tribes of the Caucasus. The Moors eventually ruled over Spain, Portugal, North Africa, and southern France for over 700 years. Many scholars and recent archaeological discoveries have now shed light on how Moorish advances in mathematics, astronomy, art, and philosophy helped propel Europe out of the Dark Ages and into the Renaissance. The British historian Basil Davidson once noted that during the 9th century, there was no land more admired by its neighbors or more comfortable to live in than a rich African civilization that took shape in Spain. African Moors were definitely black. In fact, Shakespeare even used the word Moor in his play. This play was Othello. For a pre-modern society, Moors were highly literate and education was universal in Muslim Spain, unlike other parts of Europe. It is even said that the Moors had about 17 universities, while other parts of Europe had only 2. More universities were located in Almeria, Cordova, Granada, Jaén, Malaga, Seville, and Toledo. The people who founded the Oxford University were inspired to do so after visiting Moorish universities in Spain. The UN Education Body even notes that the oldest uni operating in the world today is the University of Al-Qarauni of Morocco, founded during the height of the Moorish Empire in 859 AD by a black woman named Fatima al-Fihri. Moors further brought advancements in math and science to Europe, resulting in the scientific revolution. For instance, the number 0, Arabic numerals, and even the decimal system were introduced by these Muslims, laying the foundation for the scientific revolution that has lasted up to this day. Ibn Firnas, another Moor, was the first man who even attempted to fly in a controlled manner in 875 AD, 6 centuries before Da Vinci created the hang glider. Cordova, which was the heart of Moorish territory in Hispania, was at its time the most modern city in Europe. It is said that streets had raised sidewalks for people, they were well paved, and that they were lit by lamps. This was centuries before there was even a paved street in Paris or London. It is also noted that the city had about 900 public baths. Historians indicate that a poor Moor would rather go without food than without soap. Wow. The Great Mosque of Cordoba, La Mezquita, is one of the greatest architectural wonders of the world. Back in the day, it was lit by thousands of silver and brass lamps that burned perfumed oils. It had a low scarlet and gold roof that was supported by 1,000 columns of marble, jasper, and porphyry. One of the most noble people at this time was the Moorish musician Zirab. His name means the blackbird. He arrived in Hispania in 822. Early versions of the lute, guitar, and lyre were all introduced by the Moors. Zirab even introduced the common style of eating, where meals are broken down into different courses, starting with soups and ending with desserts. Moorish rulers in Hispania lived in amazing palaces, unlike other rulers in the rest of Europe. One such palace is Alhambra, which is today a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is one of Spain's architectural masterpieces. It sat different rulers between the 13th and 15th centuries. Knowledge of China, India, and Arabia further reached Europe through the Moors. For instance, they are the ones who carried the compass from China and into Europe. The Moors were finally defeated by the forces of King Alfonso Henriquez in January of 1492. Around 1600, the king then signed a decree that expelled some 300,000 Moors and Muslims from Hispania, which was one of the earliest forms of ethnic cleansing. Thank you for listening to our episode. We truly appreciate your continued support. Oh, my name is Zawadi. Have a great rest of your day.